Arthur Morgan is the main character in Red Dead Redemption 2. Arthur Morgan is growing to be considered one of the greatest video game characters of all time. In this video, I will take a look at Arthur Morgan's arc and analyze why it is so great. Starting out, Arthur's morality and the choices he makes are quite confusing. This is due to the fact that Arthur does both good and bad things. Good things such as remaining loyal to Dutch's gang, saving Jimmy Brooks even after he threatened to give up Arthur to the law, and helping Mary get her brother back. But at the same time, Arthur does do bad things such as robbing, killing, and beating Thomas Downs, a poor farmer trying his best to provide for his family, who desperately had to borrow money from Dutch's gang to survive but couldn't pay back in time. So why does Arthur do both good and bad things? The reason being is Arthur doesn't entirely see all the things he does as bad. Instead, Arthur believes that in order to do the right thing, you have to make bad choices, which might not make sense, but think about it this way. Arthur believes that the world is about survival, and in order to survive in a world, he'd much rather do it freely than listen to the government's rules.
This is my offer, Mr. Morgan. Bring in Vanderlyn, and you have my word you won't swing.
Oh, I ain't gonna swing anyways, Agent,
Milton.
You see, I haven't done anything wrong, aside from not play the games to your rules.
Unlike the government, Arthur is honest about his actions and has his limits. While the government creates rules but constantly breaks them. Arthur may be an outlaw, but he's well aware that what he is doing is wrong, but feels as though he has to do it. It's a lot like killing and skinning a deer for its meats. It isn't an enjoyable thing to do, but it has to be done to survive. Arthur tries his best to do the right thing and to set limits for himself. An example being when Arthur has the chance to charge Beau Gray extra to give him his lover's letter after he does a job for him.
You got my money?
Sure. Did she give anything? For me?
Yes.
Might I have it?
Sure. But it'll cost you. I can't be bothered. Here, take it.
Thank you, Arthur.
However, Arthur realizes that he's already been given enough from him as it is, so Arthur gives it to Beau anyways. In particular, there are many times where Arthur shows weakness to people. Often Arthur doesn't want to bother in anybody's business other than his own, but accepts that he has to. Some examples being with Charles and Sadie. There's a clear limit to Arthur's morality and choices. Arthur accepts the fact that in order to do the right thing, you have to get hurt in a way. Because one of the saddest themes of Red Dead Redemption, or life in general, is while it is to be expected that bad people get punished and good people are rewarded, life can sometimes be the exact opposite.
Spare me the philosophy lesson. I've already heard it from Mac Callender.
Mac Callender?
He was pretty shot up by the time I got to him. So really, it was more of a mercy killing. Slow, but merciful.
Bad people who secretly abuse the system are labeled as heroes, while honest heroes are portrayed as lying villains. It's one of the saddest truths of life. This is why Arthur accepts much of his consequences as an outlaw. Mary, for instance, Arthur still genuinely loves and wishes there was a better option for them to both be together. But because she chose not to be an outlaw with him, Arthur accepts that their relationship just can't work out. So Arthur joins Dutch's gang instead. Unlike Mary's family, Dutch's gang accepted and supported Arthur's decision to be an outlaw. The fact that Arthur has a family and people that share his idea is what makes him feel justified in continuing his life as an outlaw. One subtle thing about Arthur is notice the color of clothing Arthur wears at the beginning. Blue relates to the personality trait of the wanting of peace, the inability to change the path one believes in, and the self-pity one might suffer from making a bad decision. These traits all relate to Arthur. Throughout the story, Arthur is shown to be very loyal to the gang. Arthur is always listening to them, he's constantly saving them from danger, and he always tries to help them make the best decisions to secure the gang's safety. It's why Dutch considers Arthur his right-hand man. That is, until two major things happen. At the beginning, Arthur felt like what he was doing was the right thing. However, two major events made Arthur realize what he was striving for was a waste. The first being the downfall of the gang. As the whole world became more attached to the idea of civilization, Arthur got increasingly worried and doubtful that what the gang was doing was even right. However, every time they continued, either something they didn't expect occurred, or they ended up fighting for nothing. An idea Arthur values is the idea of fighting for something, then nothing. An example being Arthur's major dislike of the idea of revenge. Arthur dislikes the idea of revenge, mainly because it gives you nothing but more pain coming your way.
Either you got a lazy eye or lack of respect. Which is it, boy?
I ain't got no lazy eye. No respect for the likes of you.
Well, maybe when your mother's finished mourning your father, I'll keep her in black, on your behalf. You think on that, boy?
Well, maybe you shall, sir. And maybe other events will transpire.
You best stick to them books, because mark my words on this. Vengeance is an idiot's game.
Arthur believes vengeance is a game you can't win, and throughout the story, Arthur is right. Dutch, for instance, more focuses on winning against his enemies like it's a game of chess, than trying to keep everyone alive. It gets to a point where Arthur sees Dutch brutally drown Bronte to get revenge on him for setting him up. Seeing Dutch get revenge on Bronte was what made Arthur realize that Bronte was right. They stand for nothing. Arthur genuinely wanted to do the right thing, and while he doubted Dutch many times, Dutch tried to be honest and straightforward with his intentions, saying that what they are doing isn't downgrading the plan, but improving it. This is what kept Arthur loyal to the gang, but to see Dutch go against his word about revenge being a luxury they can't afford, the same thing Dutch taught Arthur and mentions at the beginning of the story, it was what started Arthur's moral reflection, and it only got worse when Dutch kills Cornwall. The second thing is Arthur getting tuberculosis. Arthur getting tuberculosis represents many things, the first being Arthur wearing his sins on his back. Because Arthur beated Thomas Downes, he ended up getting tuberculosis after Thomas Downes coughed blood into Arthur's mouth. Arthur's tuberculosis not only represents that specific sin, but all of Arthur's crimes he has committed that he is now suffering from. It's also a lot like John's scars, as Arthur's once in a while coughing is a constant reminder to everyone that he has sinned, but at the same time it also represents the guilt eating Arthur from the inside slowly. Instead of a sudden death, tuberculosis is a slowly decaying death that kills from the inside than the outside. Essentially, Arthur's guilt is building up to the point where he won't be able to take it anymore, and has to do something about it. The final thing it represents is that Arthur is a flawed man in need of help. Compare this to Dutch, who saw himself as a god, but constantly tried to hide his flaws to avoid damaging his image. Arthur can't avoid his image. He's a flawed human being like the rest of us, and he can't cover his sickness up. Though it also shows Sister that Arthur is a man in desperate need of help.
Morgan! Are you okay?
Well, never better. What are you doing here?
Well, I'm on my way down to Mexico. They're finally sending me on a mission. Brother Dorkins is very jealous. What's wrong?
I'm dying, sister.
While Arthur wanted to avoid asking Sister for help and lies about his illness, Arthur's illness gets the best of him to the point where he has to admit to his wrongs. And it's not because Arthur was trying to avoid consequences, but was more afraid of bringing more harm to others by revealing the bad man he is. When Arthur started to join Dutch's gang, he genuinely felt like he was doing the right thing. But to learn that all he brought to this world was nothing but pain throughout his entire life, makes him extremely depressed. When someone learns that their one purpose in life meant nothing, it can really crumble a person's world. Arthur would much rather die as nothing than bring more pain to the world. But the thing is that Arthur is suffering from the negativity bias. Arthur only sees the bad in him, but as we watched Arthur's story unfold, we understood that deep down, Arthur isn't all bad. Literally just before Arthur meets Sister, Arthur saves Captain Monroe, a captain in the military who only tried to give advice to Colonel Favors in helping him deal with native tensions, but all because Monroe shared his opinion in order to help. He gets sentenced for treason and to be hanged. This reflects Arthur's constant doubting of Dutch to try and improve him, but Dutch only saw Arthur as someone trying to hurt him, so he lied about leaving him to die. When Arthur sees the way Captain Monroe is treated, not only does Arthur save Monroe, but he gives him money to start a new life. Remember that before this, Arthur was guilted by Charles in helping the natives, but now we see Arthur on his own making the right decision to help others for no other reason than it was the right thing to do. It truly is inspiring. Going back to Arthur's conversation with Sister, Arthur doesn't realize just how strong he is. The fact that Arthur is being honest about admitting to his sins and feels guilt in what he's done is a true trait of strength. However, Arthur views the realization of his consequences as a bad thing that he deserves, but it's actually a good thing. No human being is perfect. We believe what we are doing is the right thing. We end up actually making a mistake. We feel guilty, and we learn to fix it. People aren't good because they're good. Conquering evil is what gives us purpose to become good people.
I guess I'm afraid.
There is nothing to be afraid of, Mr. Morgan. Take a gamble that love exists and do a loving act.
This is how Arthur fully redeems himself. With the time Arthur has left, he devotes his time to fixing his wrongs to make sure he dies for a purpose. This includes helping the Downs family regain their money, saving Rainfall's son Eagle Flies, and leaving his gang of outlaws to give John a chance to live the life Arthur never had with his family. By saving John, Arthur teaches John a valuable lesson about the mistakes he's made. Arthur takes the pain he learned to help John have his own meaning in life, because learning from the past is the best way to fix for the future. Arthur Morgan is a character many can relate to. We all start off as nothing, trying to find a purpose in life. But we make the wrong decisions and we don't realize the consequences until it's too late. But never lose hope, because there will always be time to fix sins, and the more sins fixed, the less to worry about in the future.
You're my brother.
I know. I know.
In Red Dead Redemption 2, Arthur Morgan learns to find peace within himself by redeeming the bad actions he has committed. Arthur may have lived the life of a villain, but he did die as a hero.